Now let's look at multiple cropping systems. So this might also is more commonly known for double cropping systems. So when we look at double cropping systems, we look to see what kind of crops we can grow within one calendar year, or starting in the summer and growing at least 2 crops throughout that year, so from like June to the 1st of June to May. So we look at this for those seasons that have those places that have longer growing seasons, and we can utilize both summer and winter crops as well. So I'm going to show you a graphic in just a second, and it's going to show you more of the common types of crops that we grow and how they will interact, planting and then harvesting, and then when you're able to put in that second crop. So here's this image, and you can see we have canola, wheat, pearl millet, soybeans, sunflower. So in that purple square is where we see the planting, and then the circles we see harvesting. So you can see, let's just look at wheat and soybeans. So we usually plant winter wheat if we're planting it for the crop, not to graze it through the winter. We usually plant that anywhere from the end of September into October, maybe even into November. Some of us do, and that's not harvested until June. So what's another crop that we can put in there? If once we harvest that wheat, we can put soybeans in there, like a shorter growing soybean, and have that kind of as our cash crop grow within from June when we get done harvesting that wheat until October, November, when we can harvest it. So that's just an example of 2 different types of crops grown within the same 1 year, but it's really common around this area. So cover crops, they are extremely important throughout winters, especially winters around here, because we never really know what type of weather we're going to have in the winter. So having cover on your soil is really important. This is used as a multiple cropping system, and so some farmers will just throw on some cheap hay grazer, or maybe some wheat, maybe some cheap wheat seed, just to sustain their soil, and it helps with soil protection. It really puts in some good fertility within the soil, and then helps reduce weed growth, which is also very important. So green manure crops, this is, you've heard me kind of refer to this before, this chapter, but this is just growing some sort of grass or legume crop, and before it matures, you're going to plow it under the soil. So that's why it's called green manure, because it's going to decompose into the soil. So it's going to be able to put that concentrated nutrients that's in that crop right back into the soil. For agroforestry cropping systems, so this is kind of going back to the agroecosystem chapter that we talked about a couple chapters ago. This is for trees and perennial shrubs, and we are able to then graze livestock with it as well. So we can plant some sort of hay grazer, or any sort of annual or perennial with those trees, and it enables us to not only have those trees growing and in production, but also be able to graze some livestock. Pretty common around here is pecan trees, and those livestock producers are then able to graze the grass that's below the pecan trees. So alley cropping. These are just trees that are grown in specific rows other than crops between the inter-row area. And I'll show you a picture of this in just a second, but this is more so of a windbreak or a water break for those crops, and it helps protect those crops that are more vulnerable to the soil. So this is the picture of what an alley crop looks like. So you see hay with different types of trees, and that is just acting as a windbreak. Those trees are acting as a windbreak and or water break. So silvopastures, this is with trees and then pastures for livestock utilization. The trees are then actually used for timber, so they're actually cut down, or for fruit and nut trees, or other different types of uses. And this will take a couple years to allow the trees to become mature before the harvesting starts. But so you're actually getting two different types of income off of that. You're getting either the timber, the fruit, or the nuts, and then the grass will be grazed by animals. Conservation planting, we've talked a little bit about this, but the CRP, the CRP program that the United States Department of Agriculture has is really important because it helps not only diversify the landscape, but it really puts more of that environmental quality aspect into farmers and ranchers' minds and helps them financially get some more money out of their soil and their crop because they're enrolled in the CRP program. And it's a really good program to help, especially those first-time farmers or those young farmers out with just maintaining their soil and then sustaining their soil, which is very, very important. So it's very more so people use it for erodible cropland and then a vegetative cover. And we'll talk more about that in class this week. Riparian buffers, this is just a filter strip or shrubs or trees that are planted by either like rivers or streams or lakes, more so as an ecosystem for different animals, wildlife, macroorganisms. Shelter belts, these are really cool to see from bird's eye view, but these are just rows of trees that are planted really strategically throughout that field so that it's protecting from erosion, from wind damage, and is really cool to see. This is actually grown throughout all parts of the United States, but it really has to do with the slope of your land and what crop you are planting, and if you have access to good trees.